The book of Galatians. Those of us involved in storying often discuss how should we deal with the epistles. When you try to story the Bible, what do you do with these very analytical letters, especially from Paul? Well, what I have done is I have taken the letter and I have said, what is the one central theme that goes throughout the entire letter? In other words, why was it written? What was the author trying to get across? What's that one thing? And then I stay right there. Paul especially has a lot of side thoughts. He is going down his central theme, but then he brings up side thoughts. So I have taken all those out, which I find interesting because many of our favorite verses in the Bible are those side thoughts. It really has very little to do with the central theme. So consequently, when you go through these letters, you'll find that a lot of those favorite verses are just not there and not represented. I also try to give it in a way that where it sounds like I'm dictating the letter, which is what Paul did. Because of his eyesight, he did not write these letters, he dictated them. And it's a big deal when he picks up the quill and writes something, like in this book here. The last paragraph, Paul wrote himself in large letters as he would write that last paragraph, which kind of became his style after this because there were some people passing letters around saying it was from Paul and it wasn't. So he started making a habit of always writing at least a sentence or two near the end to show that this is me. I'm the one writing this thing. When I got done with the book of Galatians, which I hold to be the first book that Paul wrote, the first letter. Not everyone agrees with that. I think it fits right in the book of Acts where I have it here. So I have it written around 49 AD. And when I first did this, I was concerned that pastors would say, now, John, you know, I don't think Paul needed any help writing that letter. I think it's all right just the way it is. So I went to a friend of mine who has pastored for many years, and I asked him if he would listen to me telling this story on a CD and get his input. He agreed. He said, oh, on the book of Galatians. He said, oh, yeah. I said, I did a 2-year series on the book of Galatians. I thought, oh, boy. Yeah, he'll probably have some comments for me, right enough. So when he came back later and he was holding that CD, he said, now, John, you know, I did a 2-year series on the book of Galatians. And I said, yes, and I basically let me have it. And he said, when I listen to this, the first thought that went across my mind is, oh, that's what he was saying. I said, what? He says, yes. He said, for 2 years, I was verse by verse, word by word, going through the book so far into the weeds that I missed what he was saying overall. If I ever take my people through a series again on the book of Galatians, I will play this CD several times throughout the series. I'll still do it by verse, word by word. But I want them to I don't want them to forget this is what Paul was saying in the big picture. Interesting that Galatia, Paul started his churches in his first missionary journey. Galatia is the only area that Paul visited all 3 missionary journeys because he would leave Antioch, go through Tarshish, where he was from, on through Galatia, going to the other cities. I also find it interesting that Paul talks more in this letter about his past, the way he was before he came to Christ and his early ministry. Also, Paul, being a Pharisee, gives us a clear understanding in this book of where the law of God fits in to the entire history of God's people. why it was written, what it means. If he'd have been a Sadducee, we wouldn't have accepted what he said. But since he was a Pharisee, and Pharisees were very dedicated to the law of God, it kind of gave him the authority to explain it to us. Well, come back next time when we give you more insights on the story.